Welcome to The Explainer. Sometimes when you're reading really old texts, it feels like you're missing something, right? Well, today we're going to play detective. We're going to decode a 2,000-year-old letter and show you how a simple, kind of hidden formula can unlock a whole new layer of meaning. It's pretty cool. Reading ancient letters, especially the ones you find in the New Testament, can feel just like that. I mean, you have the writer's words, you can see what they wrote, but you're missing the other side of the conversation. You don't have the context, the shared jokes, the stuff they both just knew. You're basically listening in on one end of the line, trying to piece the whole story together from scraps. But what if there was a key, a kind of decoder ring to unlock these messages? Well, it turns out there actually is one, and it's not some lost secret or anything like that. It's much more simple. It's all about understanding the rules of the game. Once you know the formula for how these ancient letters were written, the hidden strategies just start to pop right off the page. Okay, so let's start with the basics. The biggest challenge, really, in reading someone else's mail from 2,000 years ago is that we are total outsiders to a very specific conversation. But there's a concept that can help us crack the code. And that concept is called genre. Now, don't let the words scare you. Just think of it like a recipe, right? If you know you're reading a recipe, you expect to see a list of ingredients and then a set of instructions. It's a formula. Well, letters in the ancient world had their own recipe, their own blueprint, and the people reading them back then knew exactly what to expect. So, what was this recipe for an ancient letter? It wasn't just a random stream of consciousness. Not at all. There was a really clear, predictable structure that pretty much everyone understood and used. Every standard letter from that Greco-Roman time had these three parts. You had an introduction that said who's writing and who they're writing to. Then you had the main body, the actual point of the letter. And finally, a conclusion to sign off. Super simple, super efficient, and totally expected. And here's a perfect real-world example of that. This is a typical everyday letter from that era. You've got Serapion writing to his brothers. He starts with the standard greeting, gets right to his point, he needs some oil, and then he signs off with a date. Classic. See what I mean? It perfectly follows the formula. Sender, recipient, greeting. Main point, and a farewell. No surprises at all. This is the baseline, this is the standard way of doing things. But this is where our story gets really, really good. So the Apostle Paul, who was one of the most important letter writers of the ancient world, he knew this formula inside and out. But instead of just following it by the book, he takes this standard recipe and adds this revolutionary, game-changing ingredient right at the very beginning. Instead of using the standard Greek word for greeting, which is kairein, Paul intentionally swaps it out. He uses two different words, charis and eirene, which we translate as grace and peace. And this becomes his signature move. He's blending a core Christian idea, grace, with the classic Jewish greeting of peace, or shalom. And this little swap, it does something huge. It immediately Christianizes the whole letter. Before he's even gotten to his main point, Paul is signaling to his audience, hey, this isn't just any old note. This is a message that is framed entirely by our shared faith. So, with our decoder ring now firmly in hand, let's apply this to a real head-scratcher, the introduction to Paul's first letter to the church in Corinth. Now, this was a community he was having some serious issues with. He kicks things off with this incredibly glowing praise. I mean, he thanks God for them, for the grace they've been given, and he specifically says they've been enriched in every way. And then he highlights their gifts in speech and knowledge. Okay, remember those two words, speech and knowledge. They're going to be important. And then he drops another critical clue. Get this. In just the first 9 verses, he uses the word Lord 5 times. That is not an accident. He is deliberately emphasizing authority, reminding them right from the get-go who is ultimately in charge. Now, this is the question that must have been on the Corinthians' minds. After hearing all this praise, they're probably feeling pretty good about themselves. But Paul knew, and a lot of them knew, that there were some deep, serious problems brewing in their church. So why on earth would he start with so much praise? And this brings us to the big reveal. This is the moment where we see how Paul uses that standard introduction not just to say hello, but as a brilliant strategic tool for the very difficult conversation that he is about to have. Just look at this breakdown. The very things Paul is praising them for are the exact source of their biggest problems. He praises their speech, and then, boom, he spends 4 chapters correcting how they're dividing the church by idolizing eloquent speakers. He praises their knowledge, and then he confronts their arrogance about what they know. He praises their spiritual gifts and then has to call out the chaotic and disorderly way they were using them. This isn't hypocrisy. It's not empty flattery. It is a masterful strategy. He's affirming their true identity and their God-given gifts first. He's basically saying, look, this is who you really are at your best. Now, let's talk about how your behavior isn't quite living up to that standard. He builds them up before he corrects them. It's genius.
The whole point is that he reminds them they were called into koinonia, or fellowship. Now, this isn't just some social club. It means a shared life, a shared mission. And the common denominator in that shared life is the very Lord whose name he just happened to repeat 5 times. He's reminding them of their unity before he even starts talking about their division.
So just by understanding a simple little formula, we've unlocked a massive hidden strategy. A standard greeting becomes this powerful tool for correction and for unity. It just goes to show you that sometimes the most profound messages aren't just in what's being said, but in how it's being said. So the next time you read any text, ancient or modern, ask yourself, what are the rules of the game here? You might be absolutely amazed at the hidden messages you find.